Welcome back to our own devices, and we are going to talk this week about something it is maybe the most dropped word these days, right? Especially in this part of the world where I live in Noida, everybody's talking about AI and ML. And I have this theory that when human intelligence goes out the door, that is when AI and ML have to be resorted to. But there is somebody who really knows what this is all about. So our guest this time is Gargi Dasgupta, who is the director at IBM Research in India and CTO of IBM India and South Asia. So Gargi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nandu. My pleasure to be here.
So before we go into the deep dive, Gargi, is this a word that is actually being misused too much? Because everything has AI and ML in it, but then you struggle with the basics when you still have the AI label to it.
No, I mean, it's my perspective. I think AI is everywhere and it will be everywhere. It's almost going to be like electricity. And because of the use cases, right, because of how it has the potential of changing our lives, changing the way we work, changing the way we interact, I don't think it's a buzzword. Now, for every technology and for every mature technology, there is a learning curve. There is a curve of getting mature, and we just have to respect and give technology its time and space, and imbibe whatever is ready, whatever is beneficial to us, and then look ahead to the future. That's my take.
So, talking about time and space, we have had the pandemic, which has accelerated a lot of technologies and adoption of technologies. Is that the same that's happening with AI also?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you brought up technology, right, and digital adoption. When the pandemic came about, I think the first and the most essential thing on everyone's mind was keep business continuity, keep resiliency, and soon past that, I think they had to look at things that would improve productivity, that would keep still engage their customers, look at other digital channels of reaching out to them, reaching out to customers, being on top of their inventory and supply chain productions, right? So they had to keep people safe, they had to have the right technology in place so that people could work from wherever they are, and then start looking at how do they use technology to be more digital, to have efficiency, speed, innovation, and keep ahead of competition. So AI as a natural evolve evolving of that, I think roughly the studies show. So Morning Consult did a study that looks at AI adoption and showed that over half the Indian professionals, IT sector actually agreed that they accelerated their rollout of AI. And we'll talk about what areas we see this acceleration in, but over half. And then over 90%, right? Over 90% believe that it is important to their business, can be a game changer, and they will adopt it, right, if you make sure it's trusted and reliable. So huge uptake in AI overall. I think the technology sector has done really well. AI is a part of it. It provides a very safe mechanism to engage with their customers in different ways, and hence we see a bigger option.
Over the past few years, when there have been conversations about AI, it's been always said that AI will be like a force multiplier. It will be like a force multiplier. It's not really going to take away humans or or human jobs, whatever. But we also saw during the pandemic that it sort of stepped into places where humans could not be in a way because of the pandemic and the strange situation we all found ourselves to be in. So is that also changing the way we are looking at AI? That how is it actually going to interact with what we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always going to be that. It was going to change the type of jobs that people do and people are skilled for and they are employed for. Um, I Some jobs might not be relevant anymore with or without the pandemic, and pandemic is just an accelerator, right? I think it shows that there were times that you could not have workforce deployed in all places to capture data, and sensors, IoT devices, other mechanisms to capture data became very helpful. Which means that now the load shifted to what do you do with the data? How do you cleanse data? How do you get the insights out of this? How do you make sure they are the right data for the right downstream tasks? So the nature of the jobs and the skills are going to change with AI. and the best thing about this is that you could actually shave off things that you were reluctant to but could have been automated before, right? So you can actually use AI for automation, shave, remove things that were either redundant or change your business process completely, but then do focus, have humans focus more on the value added jobs. And that continues to be true across sectors. So I see, manufacturing, retail, and consumer, banking, financial, everywhere. I think the automation aspect of AI is really going to be big and be the game changer. Telecom, I should mention telecom too.
So, as we talk about AI adoption, especially in India, have you seen very interesting use cases come out of the country?
Right. Yeah. So absolutely. So before I go to the country, maybe an abstract of what general development areas have I seen AI getting accelerated. So I'll break it up into two basic needs. Right. The consumer needs. The consumers needed access to information and data from anywhere they want. Right. And when I say consumers, it's people who buy products and services, but also include employees, right, who work in different settings. They needed to have the same experience, use the same apps, the same tools, do the same work from anywhere, and the same access the same data from anywhere. So that was a basic need that changed. And from the enterprise bit, I mean, they absolutely had to continue selling their products and innovate on their business processes. So they saw three or four stark needs, right? In order to allow anyone to access information and data from anywhere, they had to have better secure access protocols and threat analysis mechanisms. They had to be open to omni-channel customer experience, which means, customers could now interact with them in store, online, mobile, email, all of those. Again, these were changes we were seeing, but I think the pandemic just accelerated. I touched upon automation of business processes, right, to improve productivity efficiency, because a lot of things that were just done because they were archaic and historical could be changed now. This was the time to really reinvent your business processes and still have business resiliency and innovation. Um, and visibility, right? Anywhere, everyone has to deal with their supply chains to deal with needs of customers. Supply chain visibility became a very big need. So these were, the areas that I saw the needs across the world. In India, also, right, I'll talk about some interesting use cases both in supply chain visibility and in omni channel. So we'll take those two. But I also wanted to tell you that there are various lenses and angles you could take at AI, right? And in IBM, given all the changes that we've seen during pandemic, before and after, our AI strategy is really around three things. Okay, that's natural language processing, because a lot of the enterprise data that we deal with is natural language, which means this interaction data, it means email data, documents that we write, procedures that we follow, um, you know, chatbots, whatever we deploy for our customers, they're all natural language. So NLP is one of our big things that we focus on. The other is automation, and this has been the sector that I think got bolstered the most. So automation of the entire life cycle of AI, and of course using AI for automation. Both are great use cases, and I'll talk about some of that in the examples. But you can have the best NLP technologies and automation, but if you don't enable or instill trust in your assets and what you're asking customers to do and believe, and the systems that you build, you will not move the needle on adoption. So trust is the third thing. So I'll give you a couple of interesting examples that we've done for India. And so the first one is with the bank. So it's in the BFSI sector. It's about engaging, it's in that sector of engaging internal and external stakeholders. So with ICICI Prudential, we actually created technology based on Watson's virtual assistant. So uses a completely different way of interacting with the customers, to really policyholders. In this case, the policyholders would come to the assistant, ask natural language questions, and then at the back end there were deep learning techniques that were used to actually understand what they were talking about, what they needed, and trigger of the right automations. So this was in the customer sector. The other uh, the other example that I'll give you is of emerald jewelry, and you can take this example and abstract it out to the overall the business, the retail business. So Emerald had its over 500,000 designs spread over many dealers, and wanted users and customers who wanted to buy the jewelry give the uniform experience of being at any mobile app, getting on their platform, trying the design, making navigate the different stores, and be able to pick what they want. So, a great using the zero touch engagement model, a great search technology was deployed where research focused on the APIs, right, to the visual search and visual browse, where really I pick up a design of something that I like and I say, find me something more like this. So, can it be done without the pandemic? Absolutely, yes. The need accelerated during this time, and hence was a great use case. So both ICICI Prudential and Emerald Jewelry think of it as new ways to engage customers and get customer stickiness. The other one that I talked about was supply chains and the need to know where are your demands going to search, where is your inventory, how do I optimize, and how do I reduce time to market and get the things that are needed by my customers at the right time at the right place. So demand prediction, right sizing of inventory, all of these are important problems. And with Parley, we worked on an intelligent supply chain solution that really enables us to do that. There's so and that I think very similar to Parley, we also worked with Bestseller India to infuse intelligence in its platform. It's in the fashion industry. The use case here was that can I do the right merchandise prediction for the consumer, and then really determine what assortment I need at a Bangalore store versus a Pune store versus a Delhi store. So those were my top pick. But again, like I said, I'm seeing the surge in engaging customers in a net new different method. I'm seeing a big surge in automating business processes, and or even reinventing business processes with AI, and then supply chain visibility.
So a couple of weeks back, Gargi, I had to update a couple of things with my bank, and I was faced with an AI-driven system. And at the end of it, I sort of got the experience that the experience was actually much better than I would have had interacting with a human. And interacting with a human, especially in a bank, now is becoming is not an experience that is improving itself, because I guess banks are interacting so less with people, and they prefer you to send a mail and whatever. So the experience of using an AI driven thing was quite good, because it's intelligent. It knows what I want to do. It tells me exactly how to take. So I had to take a photo of my Aadhaar card and upload it. It happens so seamlessly. So do you think that this is also going to stay, in a sense that people are not going to really want to go back to a lot of the old processes that we have had before?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so, right? And but a lot depends on us and how we improve the technology. Like you said, that you had a good experience. You and at the back end, right? What played is it understand your natural language. It understand the image. It did image recognition on your Aadhaar card, and it figured that it had all the details. So all of these things are technologies that we are improving overnight, right? So image recognition, speech recognition, accuracies are all time low thanks to the large amount of data that we have. Natural language processing. I don't know if you've seen this big focus on large language models that don't need, your interaction with the bank, that specific data to be trained. So we are working a lot on that. I do think the technology is here to stay. We just have to focus in terms of our investments in research and scientific innovations, and I think it'll change the way we interact. One of the things also that I just wanted to say is that, uh, about 2 years back, any for a bank to deploy such a virtual assistant would be an order of months, right? So like it'll take anywhere between 3 to 6 months, and we've been that basic pain point we've been trying to address by saying that it shouldn't take so long, and it should be just like, days. If we can get our training down to days and weeks, and the virtual assistant is there to serve Nandu because it has learned from all thousands and 10 thousands of conversations that similar customers have had on this issue. So I think I'm very hopeful. I'm positive. I believe a lot in the technology and the power of AI, and I think it can really make a difference.
Isn't it also a big opportunity for a country like India, where we have these dark spots where, okay, it's very difficult for somebody maybe in a very small village to actually interact with somebody even at the district level, but even these conversations can be taken over by AI or AI driven systems, just in governance and all, the kind of ease this brings across. Isn't that going to be a game changer in a country like India?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I think, 24-hour access where we don't have enough staff, or I might have staff in a certain periods of time, but, the customer needs could be anywhere around the clock. You talked about infrastructure, right? If I don't have a physical call center to host my agents, I think this is not needed anymore, right? I can have a small little model sitting on my handheld, and it could actually answer my questions, and then at the best opportunity, route it back into the cloud or areas of good connectivity. So all those in vast countries like India, where most of the population is concentrated still in rural areas where the last mile connectivity is a problem, I think these technologies can really make a difference.
It's interesting that you brought about the case of the handheld, and there's a time when we are seeing, an AI tag go with a lot of processors which are coming even into mobile phones. So is that going to be a challenge, actually bringing in the hardware capability across the board, which can, help people use AI effectively, even at a very micro level? And is there also going to be the challenge of actually skilling people, uh, to use AI, to their better? Is it also going to be a challenge to skill people to use AI to learn the process of ensuring that the data is there so that the AI can work on top of it?
Yeah. So good question. The latter question is, we'll have to ask who are the personas who today do this job, right? Of the gatekeeping of the data, really handles the governance, really figures out if the stuff that we are building and rolling out to customers is has good data to run on, right? I think so. There are many personas involved. There's the data governance. There's some roles, and so of course data scientists, right? Data scientists today spend about 80% of their time making sure that the data that they have collected is right and good, and for but but there are also other personas. There's data auditing, data governance. Especially think of something, right? I'm going to infuse a business process with a recommendation system, right? Could be a loan recommendation system, could be a hiring recommendation system. There needs to be checks and balances to make sure that my model is really doing, is recommending either the right candidates or not recommending for loans, the customer base that I don't want to target, right? So there are all these issues, and today these are also done primarily manually. So when we say, AI is going to be a scale up multiplier, it's because these new jobs are getting created. These data governance officers, these data scientists, right, if they want to do it, also need tools and skills, like you said, to ensure that the entire life cycle, which is data, data governance, model building, and deployment, is a smooth process, right? It's really not a one-time task. that I get some data, I build some model which is highly accurate, and I put it in there. But there are enough examples in the, enough touch points and auditing and governance in the whole life cycle. Will it need skills? Absolutely. Will it create new jobs? Absolutely. But I still don't think it's the consumer who's going to see all of that, right? Consumers will continue to touch with their, either touch screen or their typing or their speech. And for them, it's going to be a seamless experience, but someone needs to be bothered about this. And there should be, and this is probably the new set of jobs that we will create for the data officers.
So when we talk about data and trust in data, is there a cultural issue here also? Because like maybe so if you're looking at India against a Europe, is there a cultural issue that we have not really been very good with data or gatekeeping of data or keeping it clean, so that you can actually have an
Yeah.
AI model sit on top of it?
Good point. I would say that there's a lot to be desired in how we handle the data, the principles that we follow in creating these data platforms, which actually scale and allow me to collect the data, cleanse the data, govern the data, audit the data, so that my downstream use cases. There's more to be done, but I think there are some initiatives in the country that are looking to data, data platforms and data governance. So there is a smart city initiative by the Department of Science and Technology that actually looks at data, creating data platforms in select cities so that all the municipal data can actually be collected, cleansed, and made ready, made AI ready in one sense. And then when I was also with the NASCOM in some of these meetings, and we were doing a survey of all AI use cases, both in manufacturing sector as well as the retail and consumer sector. And I saw, I would say, a 30% increase in all the proposals that came about and saying first we start with data. So I think people are getting to realize the importance of data ops and having a principled approach to collect data and create these roles and responsibilities in their organizations. But yeah, are we there where, either the EU, the European Union is, or maybe China? I think still a journey.
So, if I can ask you one last question, Gargi, is that when you talk about data trust, we also have the problem of data bias, right? And in AI, that's one asterisk on top all the time. And in a country like India, where we are so complex, and you can't have a one size fits all approach for the entire country. So so is it right to think that bias also creeps in that way? That maybe something that works for a certain part of the country is not true for another part of the country, because we are so complex and diverse. So do you have to work around things like that?
We will, but I think the problem is at a. I think you're talking about demographic bias, and I'm sure that will be a big topic today. I think if I look at trust, right, there are four real things that either create trust in a system or product that I buy, or the lack of it, right? And that is whether I have the knowledge that there is fairness in the system, right? Because if I think something is inherently unfair, I think the conversation stops there, right? So it's very important to instill fairness. It's very important for AI systems to become more than black boxes, which means that they need to be able to be accountable for explaining decisions, right? If I reject a loan to a consumer, in the technical sense, I could make an explainable system that gives a contrastive explanation that says, hey, I am sorry, as a bank I couldn't approve your loan, but if you did ABC, which could be, either pay your credit cards on time or work on your credit history, I think this could get approved, right? So again, it's a contrastive explanation, is a way to give explainable actions to consumers. There are many other ways to give explainable reasons, but explainability is a big thing. The third is robustness, right? Think of things that we gravitate towards, either brand names, hospital chains. We need to know that they are there, and the slightest change in either the conditions or data that I feed it is not going to create a completely different decision. So robustness is also another big thing. And finally, transparency, right? We love transparency when we interact with our colleagues, peers, and we expect the same from systems. So, so most of the problems of trust, Nandu, today are around these four. Now, does it have a demographic lens? It could, right? It could have demographic lens. Certain sections of the people might just be underrepresented in the data, right? And that's where the fairness unfairness discussion comes. And I think you were saying bias. There are tools today to detect how biased your data is, right? Is it skewed towards a certain gender? Is it skewed towards a certain population? So certain types of demographics, like people living in metros. And we can make those corrections. The first thing is to detect and observe, right? So we have the tools to detect and observe. We are getting towards tools to um, make amends and rectify the data. But so I do feel confident that we should be able to generate and instill the trust that yes, it's a fair system, and it's a continuous journey. But you're absolutely right that we need to be able to highlight if we see biases in data, and also make recommendations on how one can correct them, right? Because my business objective might be that I want to diversify to a set of the population, and if that population is not even represented in the data, the model will never learn those statistical patterns, right? That's the key underpinning of how these algorithms work. If I have not seen it, I cannot predict it. So at least being aware and monitoring and observing and telling people, hey, this section is completely underrepresented, is the first step towards fairness.
So that was Gargi Dasgupta explaining to us how AI is sort of becoming the electricity in our lives, or the new electricity in our lives, taking over every aspect of literally everything that we do. Thank you, Gargi, for being on the show.
Thank you, Nandu. My pleasure.
So this was Nandagopal Rajan again with our own devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest and more insights.